All right, I think it's safe to say that we can go ahead and get started. I just want to say hello to everybody joining us today. I am Zoe Huval. I'm the president of the Anthropology Society at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. Today is Anthropology Day. It is super exciting. They had like a whole bunch of events, virtual events that were put on by different organizations and clubs. And this is our little event. This presentation is going to be hosted by Dr. Elizabeth Briody, and we should have a little bit of an activity afterwards. But also, before we get started, I just want to let everybody know to make sure that you keep yourself muted during the presentation. If you guys do have any questions, please just throw it into the chat and we will get to them and address them as they come in. And after the presentation, we will have a little bit of a Q&A session. So if you did want to, save your questions for that time, that is perfectly okay. At that time, you can either go ahead and put the questions in the chat, or you can use the raise your hand function through Zoom. And just as a courtesy notice, this presentation will be recorded, and I should have that posted for everybody's accessibility later, probably next week or so, but I'll send an email to all the participants whenever that is completed. But anywho, thank you guys for joining, and let's get started.
Well, hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Briody, and I'm so happy to be here today. I hope that you'll enjoy the presentation and the workshop that follows. It's a fairly simple concept, what I'm going to be presenting. It's all about sketching or drawing and how we can use that as a way to understand how people conceptualize culture. I got this idea years ago and never really did much with it. But I was in Japan at the time. I was working for General Motors and studying a vehicle program that GM was partnering on with Isuzu. And I noticed that, well, there were three languages that people were speaking. They were speaking Japanese, English, and also Portuguese, because the people working on this vehicle program came from the US, Japan, and Brazil. And so I noticed when they got together, typically the Americans only spoke English. The Japanese could understand quite a bit of English, but didn't really care to speak it. And the Portuguese speakers spoke a fair amount of English. And if they were of Japanese origin, they also spoke Japanese, first generation, I should say. So I noticed if they didn't have language skills and they needed to communicate with somebody who did not speak their language, they started to draw. And they would draw sketches, and the other person would draw in response. And I thought that was the most interesting thing, because without being able to verbally communicate, this seemed to me like a pretty effective strategy for being able to express whatever kinds of technical requirements you needed, any kind of design requirements you needed, and so on. And so at any rate, that's when the idea got initiated. Now I'm just going to go through and tell you a little bit about what we're going to do. So the overview of this workshop has a main goal, which is to help us all understand the value of what drawings or sketches can bring to us and to the people with whom we are working. I have three objectives for this workshop. And the first is to go over with you a sequence sequenced way in which I embed drawing in my projects. And there are 3 steps to it: describe, draw, and explain. And we'll get to that in more detail in just a moment. The second thing, because anthropologists always love to connect what they're doing to some theoretical foundation, I'm going to be talking about cultural models theory, which really has to do with figuring out what is it that this particular group that I happen to be involved with, how do they think about the world? What is their sort of model, their consensus view, their understanding of what's going on? And then the third objective is for you to practice the same technique that I've developed and see how well it works for you. Because if it works, then it seems to me that this is something that you can use immediately in any kind of a project that you might work on in the future. So all you will need for the project is paper and pencil. What we're going to do when we get to the workshop part is to pair you up in breakout teams, in breakout rooms, I should say, in probably pairs. So 2 people in each breakout room, and you're going to work together on this technique and see what you think of it. So let's just go over a little bit of background because I think that might be helpful. The strange thing about drawing or sketching is that I can find literally no instances where anthropologists have actively sought drawings or sketches from the people with whom they are working, those that they happen to be working with on a project, or those that they are studying for whatever purpose. The one exception are children. And I think that's because children are so comfortable typically with drawing that it seems like a good way to understand what a child is thinking. And there are many other disciplines, including psychology, that use that technique with children quite frequently. The only thing that I found in the literature about anthropologists using drawings is really related to their own work. For example, oftentimes anthropologists will have their notebooks with them that they carry around when they're in the field, or their pads of paper or whatever, and they may sketch themselves from what's going on in the field as a way to remind themselves of what they saw or how they felt or something. And oftentimes you'll see these, you'll see little visual images in field journals. There are some couple of people that have taken a look at field journals from, close to 100 years ago. And in those cases, they can actually see little sketches in the journals. So it was, and they would then look at those sketches and see how they related directly to the notes that were also in the journals. I've also seen situations where an anthropologist would get an illustrator to work with him or her in the field. And then the only other instance I could find was that if you are a design anthropologist, which is a very popular career these days, branching out into user experience as well, that oftentimes these design anthropologists are working with designers. And when they do, they often sketch out concepts of whatever it is they're hoping to design. And so in that process, they are collaborating with someone outside of anthropology, but for the purpose of some client. Let's say maybe it's a company that they're doing something for, or maybe it's a city government, whatever it happens to be, but they often will use sketches. But no one that I could find has actually, no anthropologist that has published that I could find routinely asks adults that they are working with on a project, studying as part of a project to draw. And I thought that was incredible because to me, it just seems like, why not? Why wouldn't you ask them to draw a picture? So I told you, about my first thought when I saw the Japanese and American and Brazilian engineers drawing together. Some of my colleagues said, well, we should, we were working on a project at that time involving Blue Cross and a bunch of insurance firms, health insurance firms. And so we asked some nurses if they would draw for us certain aspects, in response to a particular question, tell us about your experience with X or whatever, and they would draw a picture of that. And then later we used the technique on a project involving NASA. There are a bunch of NASA engineers who come from research centers on the aeronautical side of NASA, not the space side. I only worked on the aeronautical side. And we used them, we used the drawing technique in the same way with them, and it seemed to work out. And then I had a chance to do a project for a very large Saudi Arabian petrochemical company. And there we used the technique and it worked beautifully. And so finally, I said, there's something here. I've got to do a project where I'm actually going to publish on these drawings. So one of my current projects involves studying staff, faculty, and students at a big university, public university in the Midwest. And so I decided I would ask the staff in particular to give me some drawings in the course of my discussions, my interviews with them, and they did. And so that's what that's really where I hopefully perfected the technique. So one question is, how might the drawings connect with anthropological theory? And there is a body of work that's referred to as cultural models theory. I'm not necessarily thinking you should have heard of this because it's still not quite as popular as at least I would like it to be. But it really, you can see in the box there, it really has to do with trying to identify some kind of integrated understanding or a consensus view of what a particular group of people experience in their day-to-day lives, whether it's their work lives or regular lives, or if they're participating in some group or whatever it happens to be. And so the idea is, what is it that they share in common? And you can get at that if you can ask them to draw something. You can see if the drawings look similar to each other. And so we tried it with a group, and we found that when you do that, if you have, let's say, 3 different groups of staff, which we had, we asked them each to, all the people on each of those 3 groups to come up with a drawing that gave an idea about what their particular group focused on for a particular project. And if you look just at the drawings separately for each group, son of a gun, they're amazingly consistent with each other. You could easily sort them into those 3 groups without even knowing that those people belonged in those 3 groups. All you have to do is take a look at the drawings, and that will essentially tell you. So the drawings are really an interesting way to help you help the people that you might be studying or that you are involved in a project with to understand how they view their own culture. The two visuals that you see on the left-hand side of the slide were visuals that I drew on earlier projects that I worked on. So here I wasn't doing it in my field notes, but I was trying to conceptualize the culture at an earlier point in my career based on what the interview data told me. And so these were my conceptualizations. And the longer I looked at those, and then as I've told you, the idea of drawing just kept coming back to me over and over again. And so I thought, well, if I can do this, certainly other people should be able to draw things too. So here is what I have found to be a really interesting way to use this technique. First, you have to know what the interview is about. I mean, what information are you after? So in this particular case, and this would be the one with the university staff, I told them that I was really interested in their team interactions, the ones that worked well as well as the ones that did not work so well. But I wanted to know what the team interactions were like. So there were the 3 different staff teams, and I should say they were staff led. In other words, the key person on the team was a staff member, not a professor, not a student, though students and professors were sometimes part of those groups. So that's the first thing you got to do. You have to know what you're going to ask them to draw. And I wanted them to draw their team interactions. Then, so you've told them that. Then you ask them, before any drawing happens, you ask them to describe how those interactions are or were. And so they start telling you, oh, well, this happens and that happens. And this person usually leads the discussion and the meetings last this long. So they tell you all this stuff, right? As people do in interviews, they will just start talking. And if you are unclear on something, you'll ask them a probing question. Well, can you talk to me more about that? Or, well, what did you mean by this? And so on. So you actually get a pretty good description of what the team interactions were, let's say in this case. And then you move on to step 3, which was where you're going to now ask them to draw these team interactions. So you say, okay, can you draw a picture of what you were just talking about? And you'll get, very interesting, different kinds of pictures. And you only give them a short period of time. I mean, I usually say, look, I don't want you to think about this. Just go ahead and draw whatever comes into your mind and do it in a minute or less. So, it takes almost no time during the interview, but it's sufficient time where they know that, they're going to be able to give you something. And typically before they start, it's really kind of funny. They'll say something like, oh, well, I'm not a very good artist. I mean, if they've said that once, they've said that a million times. And I just have to laugh. And I say, I'm not going for artistic excellence here, just interested in a sketch, however you would sketch out something that really reflects how you think your team interactions were. And then the last step is they finish their picture. And the beauty of this technique is that you can do it in an online interview just as well as you can do it in an in-person interview. So they finish their sketch, and then you say, okay, show me your sketch. They show it to you, put it up to the camera. Okay, well, tell me what you just drew. And then they start talking about their drawing. And it's fascinating because what will happen is, it's obvious to a certain extent what the drawing is about, and you just heard them describe it before they drew it. So you kind of have a pretty good feel for what it is. But they then start elaborating on why they drew that drawing and what else they were thinking of when they drew it. You don't even have to ask them to say much. They just start talking about their drawing. If for some reason you have a very quiet interviewee, no problem. You can say, well, gee, I noticed this particular attribute in your drawing, this little thing that you drew here. What does that mean? Or why did you draw that? And so you can ask them questions about their drawing, particularly if you don't fully understand what it's supposed to represent. But typically they're very forthcoming. And all of this interaction, I mean, these interviews that I did with the staff, on average, they were 25 minutes. start to finish. And that included time at the beginning where I would ask them to describe what role they played in the university and how they got on that team in the first place and so on. So why bother to do it? And here I just want to talk a little bit about the results. If we take a look at the descriptions that they gave before they drew their sketch, and then we compare them with the sketch itself, you will see that there was novel content added into the drawing over and above the original statements. And that happened with every single person in my sample. So I only had a small sample. I only had 20 staff members that I interviewed, or I should say 20 university people that I interviewed. 16 of them were staff, and the others, as I mentioned, were either professors or students. But that was pretty remarkable that the drawing got them to add additional information that they had not been able to articulate to me verbally. And then the second big insight was that if we look at how they explained what they drew and compared it to their initial descriptions, 85% of the 20 people used their drawings to enhance or to add more information to their original description. So to me, that was just those two findings were astounding. And it made me think, why is it that we're not seeing more anthropologists soliciting drawings from the people that they interact with? I will say one other thing. You remember I said there were 3 groups. 2 of the groups were quite similar to each other. Their drawings were different, but they, if you looked just within group 1, those drawings were similar. And if you looked within group 2, those drawings were quite similar. Then we got to group 3, and group 3 was really, really different. Their drawings were all over the place. They didn't seem to, connect very well with the other drawings. And I had to keep going back between the drawing and their descriptions, and then the drawing and their explanations, first on an individual level, and then as, looking at the whole set, in order to figure out why is group 3 so darn different than the other 2 groups in terms of their drawings. And it turned out there was a reason for that. The first 2 were really teams in the sense that members of the team contributed equally. They were all involved in the decisions. They got, they just worked together extremely well. The third group also worked together extremely well, but it turned out they really weren't a team. They were simply a network, and that network was only doing work to help out one person on the team leader. It was almost like they were advisors to the team leader, as opposed to the first 2 groups where they were really in it because they had a particular reason for participating in the team. They were equally interested in the outcomes, as opposed to the third group where they really, they were just trying to help the team leader out. That was it. They were giving him some of their time, but nothing beyond that. So the drawings or the subgroups, or I should say the groups, can show either similarity or difference, but both are valuable. And then a third reason to solicit these drawings is because people enjoy it, and it's fast. And as I said, you can do them during COVID, and you can do them, when you're in person with someone. Now, you might want to know, well, how does this cultural models theory connect with the drawings? And you've got the same box from before that defines cultural models theory. But at least what I see in the drawings is that you do arrive at a consensus view based on the drawings. And then you can compare those drawings to their verbal statements that they made in the interview. So now you really have two different sources of data. It's not just an interview. It's an interview in which drawings are embedded. And so because you now have two methods that you're working with, the drawings and the verbal statements, you can compare and contrast how internally consistent those are. You can use one to validate the other. And you have the big sort of aha moment is that no one in cultural models theory had talked about actually drawing what the model looked like. And so here's an opportunity to select one of the staff members from each of the groups and use that person's drawing as a way to basically say, this seems to represent the cultural model of the group. So I think that the drawings really extend cultural models theory in a very pragmatic way, which makes it a nice tool to add to the anthropological toolkit. So now we're at the exercise, but before we get to the workshop, maybe if there are any questions, I could try to answer them.
Does anybody have any questions right now? Doesn't look like anybody had put any into the, oh, okay, somebody has one. Renee is asking, what are some of the kinds of things that are drawn? I guess, is there like an example?
Yeah, sure. Like in the first group of staff, one of the things that they would routinely draw was a table with people, well, little circles around the table representing the people who were at the team meeting. And then oftentimes those people were connected by arrows. So that was to imply interaction. So that was kind of a typical drawing for one of the groups. And then the third group, which was the one that was so different from the other two because it was really a network, one person actually drew, what do you call those things? Dream catcher, you know, like a circular network of sorts. It's supposed to collect your bad, dream catcher supposedly collects your bad dreams so that you can sleep easy at night. But at any rate, that was kind of a metaphor that one of the staff members drew to reflect what that third group was like.
A follow-up question to that is, what is the prompt that was given to them prior to the drawing? Were they consistent or did you change the prompts?
No, I didn't change the prompt. I just said, I'd love for you to draw a picture of what your team's interactions were like. Okay.
Whenever we're dealing with these sketch exercises in an interview setting, can they be utilized, I guess, to do, I guess, like field work in different sectors of our society, like in like law enforcement areas, do you think?
I you know, honestly, I don't know too much about law enforcement, but you know, as I said, I've used the technique in a variety of different industries. I used it at NASA. I used it with nurses, used it on university campuses, used it in petrochemical companies. So why not?
So if I'm understanding correctly, is kind of the point of this sort of, I guess, like interview, is it to kind of gain knowledge as far as like specific like ideologies or just situational truths of circumstances?
I think it depends on you know, how you phrase the question and how the person chooses to respond, whether verbally or in the illustration. You know, as I said, I tried to ask the question fairly neutrally, you know, draw me a picture of what your team interactions were like. And then they can, that the individual can do with that as the individual wants. But like I said, the curious thing is that for the first two groups, their drawings were consistent with each other completely. That it was all team related stuff, whereas the third group was really less so, because it really wasn't a team. It was just a bunch of people trying to help out this guy who had a problem.
That's interesting. Did anybody else have any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Elizabeth.
Barbara?
Yes, it's me.
Oh, how good. How cool. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Barbara Olson is a very well-known, unbelievably talented business anthropologist who has worked in advertising for, I think, most of her career, and then taught as well. And her illustrations are unbelievable. They're beautiful. Anyway, Barbara, how are you?
Good. I'll start my video because, you know, I use that when I don't want anybody to see me, but I didn't know what the format was here. So anyway, you know, I just had an idea, Elizabeth. I don't know how this would work, but where some of your informants in a setting may be confused about even what to do or how to start, although it doesn't seem like you have any problem getting it going. But what if you were to have symbols that they could draw on if they were like stumped by what to do? You know, like,
well, yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Or fences, or, you know, just something like that.
Right. You know, it's funny because there were a couple of people who said, oh, I really don't know what to draw. And I just sat there. You know, silence is golden sometimes.
Yes.
And so I, you know, after a few, you know, maybe 10 seconds I said, well, I'm sure you can come up with something. And eventually they do, you know, but that happened in so few cases that it didn't seem to be that much of a problem. It was more, they were concerned about, oh my God, she's going to be judging what my sketch looks like. And not at all. I wasn't. I mean, sometimes people, not on this particular project, but on one of the other ones, I would get smiley faces or sad faces, you know. So people come up with metaphors if it reflects, you know, what they're feeling or how they experienced something. Yeah. And then they will talk to you. You know, say, well, gee, you had a happy face. Why did you draw a happy face? And then they will talk to you more about that.
This is such a brilliant idea.
It is so fun. I'm not kidding you. It's a blast. It's a blast to do this.
I'm so happy to hear you do this.
Yeah. Anybody else got a question before I don't want to take you all your time tonight, and I do want to have some chance for you to practice this.
Yes, we did have somebody ask a question.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
They were wondering about the interviewer and the interviewee, like, rapport, how that changes from before and after the elaboration on the drawings. Is there like more comfort? Is there, what are the tendencies?
Typically what happens is by the end of the interview, these interviewees are so pumped up about this whole process. I mean, like, they don't want the interview to stop. They want to keep going. It's great. I mean, now of course, consider your subject matter. If you were talking with them about a very difficult subject, you're going to have a very different reaction. You know, if you're talking to them about abuse, if you're talking to them about COVID in their family, if you're talking to something that is very challenging for them to deal with, you will get a different response. But at least in the cases where I've used it, I have not had that experience, and all of the interviewees by the end of it are just like, oh, are we going to do any more drawings?
That's awesome. Really am excited about learning about this concept and implementing that in like field work, because I think you can absolutely extract more data, you know, having people be involved in the process, you know. I think that's
Yep.
so awesome.
And it turns out that what happened, at least according to one of the anthropologists that I read, was that the camera was invented. And because the camera was invented, it seems to have reduced the necessity for even the anthropologist to draw in the notebooks while in the field. You know, it's just so much easier to just pull out your camera. And now, of course, it's easy to pull out your phone and take the photo. So drawing kind of fell by the wayside. And I think we need to think about bringing it back, because there is absolutely some value here. As a matter of fact, I'm just today I turned in the proofs for an article on this work. And so if any of you are interested in, it is available, or it will be, like in a few days, I think, available through the American Anthropological Association. And the particular journal is called the Annals, ANNALS, of Anthropological Practice. Annals of Anthropological Practice. It's kind of a big mouthful there, but the paper that describes this in more detail will be coming out. You can refer to that, or you can contact me at a later date.
Is there, so whenever we're looking at, I guess, the subfield or the field of visual anthropology or even ethnography, is there examples of this work being utilized more often?
No.
Wow, that's interesting.
I know, that's what blew my mind. As soon as I did that literature search, I just couldn't find anything.
That's wild.
Drawing just does not seem to enter into the picture in a substantive way, you know, with the exception of children. And even then it's pretty spotty.
Yeah.
The psychologists use it all the time, but we do not.
That's so wild. We do have another question.
Okay.
Thinking about what you said about the happy and sad faces, they are wondering if or how the prevalence of emojis might influence how quick sketches are expressed between groups. I guess more utilizing this activity in a digital format. I wonder if that
could be an extension of this concept here. No question about it. It might be a little bit limiting in the sense, if you only provide, you know, let's say 10 symbols or 20 symbols, and you're asking the person pick one, you know, you're going to get one of those 20 symbols, and yet the person may have experienced something that isn't among the 20 symbols.
Right.
So it's limiting from that point of view. I will say that the happy and sad faces occurred with, I was interviewing a bunch of Dutch people in the Netherlands, and that's where they popped up, strangely. And that was on that petrochemical project.
Well, awesome. Okay. So if nobody else has any further questions, we can, I guess, move forward with the workshop.
Okay, that sounds great. So I'm going to leave this slide up, and I'm going to give, you're going to be, each of you will be put into a break room with at least one other person. I think that's how we'll do it. And then you will have, I don't know, let's say 10 minutes. So you'll each take 5 minutes. So you've got to be focused, okay? You got to be disciplined. And the first one of you will say, I'm interested in, and this is just my suggestion, I'm interested in student preparation for the world of work, okay? And then you ask your partner, you know, all right, talk about what we should have in our anthropology program so that we are better prepared for that world of work. And then you ask them to draw that, and then you ask them to explain what you drew. Okay, so it's 3 steps. And then once you're finished, then your partner will ask you the same thing. So by the end of it, by the end of the 10 minutes, the 2 of you will each have 1 drawing each. Okay, how's that sound?
That sounds good to me.
Okie dokie. So now we're going to do the magic and put everyone into groups. And by my time, I have 7:15, so I think it's 6:15. Is that right? So we'll reconvene here. Let's say we'll reconvene at 6:25. Will that work?
Yes.
So watch your time, people. 5 minutes each. That's all you have. And when you'll get a message, I think, that says, you know, time's almost up.
Yes. Okay. Let me see that assign automatically.
Want to know about how you are being prepared for the world of work. Oh, Zoe, are you joining this one?
Okay, so it automatically left me out. I got.
Oh, well, then you and Haley do it, because I've already done this a million times.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna go get a cough drop because my throat's kind of scratchy. Go ahead.
Sounds good. Haley, how's it going?
Good.
Okay. So this is a really new, exciting situation. Did you have an idea for like a question that we could do?
Okay, do you want to do the one where like how the prompt where she said what should we do to prepare for students in anthropology for the world of work, or?
Yeah, we can definitely do that one. That would be easy.
Sounds good.
Okay, I'm just writing the question down. Okay. I guess let me ask you first, or unless you want to go first.
No, you can go first.
Okay, cool. Okay. So I guess let me see the steps. So I guess the question is, what we can do to prepare young anthropologists for the workforce? Yeah. Okay, cool. So can you explain to me what you would do to help prepare young anthropologists or young students to do anthropology?
Well, I think a problem with this stems from a lot of kids, including myself, don't find out what anthropology is until college. So it's a rush of trying to figure out what it is, what I got to do to get a grad school. So I think one solution to better help kids is to outreach into high schools. So where they can focus on getting some type of field work or doing volunteer work in college instead of figuring out, okay, I want to do anthropology, but I have no idea what all anthropology entails. And I have no idea what I want to do. Like something with that. Like start with the basics first. And then in colleges, just figure out like faculty they can provide, like either volunteer work, organizations, or there's always something. Just invite like the basics of field work, organization, or some type of volunteer work and guidance.
Yeah. Can you draw an example of that?
Sure. I'll draw a quick example. Okay. There we go. I got it. Wait, I don't know if you can see it. It's all kinds of scribbles.
Can you explain it?
So basically, the guy with the top hat is a professor. And this thing is a second-rate Hogwarts, so like a college. And here is a student trying to take like a FAFSA or some type of like, when you're a senior, they ask you what kind of job you want to do. And he's handing him a piece of paper, which is facts and things about anthropology or an introduction where they can introduce anthropology to them instead of trying to figure everything out at once in college. And then you have to stress with undergrad.
That's so cool. That's awesome. How do you think that would, like, I guess, work with like what we're seeing with like the digital age, like about like educational outreach opportunities? They're like going, because we can't, interact with people right now, like everything is online and via Zoom and stuff. How can we access those kids?
I think for me, what I've seen is I had a really good principal in elementary. And I'm from a school where either three things happen when you graduate. You become a nurse, oil field, welder. Or the fourth one, you work on the boat. And they would have these authors, they would make either a pre-video and they would make almost like these animations for us to follow. And like even high schoolers, we love animation. And I think if you have someone just not even going to detail explaining anthropology and like little animations, like these are the four subfield, or doing like Zoom, what we're doing now, or any PowerPoint, or you could just give them an option to join class. I find, and especially like small towns, you're going to have at least one kid somewhat interested because they're going to automatically think there's something out there for me besides these four little jobs when I graduate. So it's like there's always something, whether it's PowerPoints, pre-video thing that the teacher can have for their students just to watch, and they could do not even a test or a quiz, but it could be bonus points. Like, what did you learn about anthropology? What did you learn about this? Something with that always helps.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, cool.
Ready?
Yes.
So, what do you think we should do to prepare anthropology students for the world of work or field work?
That question alone like rules my mind, you guys, because I'm all about the educational outreach. Like that's one of the reasons why I created this speaker series for our students. And it's like, because my experience kind of similar to yours, like I didn't know what anthropology was whenever I went to college. I went to UL and I had a dropout, so I'm older, but the first time I went, I still didn't know what anthropology was. I knew that I was fascinated by people. It was like this childhood thing. I went to see this exhibit, the King Tut exhibit, and I know that's like archaeology and Egyptology and stuff, but it still was just mind-blowing. I just like could see the sarcophagus and like the mummies and just be like, oh my gosh, that was a living being, that's thousands of years old. That's just so amazing. But I still didn't know what anthropology was, but that's like my earliest memory of subconsciously knowing that I am meant to be an anthropologist, so it's like, how do you encourage this? And me being the type of person that I am, grassroots efforts I've been involved with on different topics within the community, but it's really difficult to make change or to have a voice, because it takes a very, very, very long time to get somewhere, I feel like, with just the grassroots effort. So for me, it's all about like policy change and like, how do we be like activists and stewards, like cultural stewards, you know? But a lot of that is educational outreach, because if we are aware of those things early on, if we can go into schools and have these presentations, then I think that's, sorry, that would be a good start. I can go on and on about this. Okay, I'm gonna
Can you draw that for me, please?
Yes.
I agree with what you said too, though.
Okay, this is really bad, but it is a newspaper stand with a newspaper. And that kind of represents the need to have a voice and to get that information out there. And I think even with like old school, you know, printing press type of situations, that can be a tool, you know, just to literally have these magazines or zines, like that's a project of mine, to just have them on street corners and, you know, in the buildings on campus, so people can just pick it up and go, you know.
So what did you two think of the exercise?
I liked it.
Me too.
Except I'm kind of like a perfectionist whenever it comes to like artistry. So like, and that's the thing. It's like, I wish I would have more time to like a whole hour just to like paint this whole.
It's the concept we're after.
Yeah.
Not the perfection.
Exactly.
I think we'd better go back. Can we go back?
Yeah.
7:25 or 6:25 by my time.
Let me try to figure
Now,
out.
how many pairs do we have? Do you know?
1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4
Okay.
pairs.
Okay. Great. That's
So it
perfect.
should be giving them a notification to leave the break.
Yep, I see that. And so would we have time for me to ask 2 of the groups to report back?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. That sounds great.
Okay.
Zoe.
Hey, Liz, what's up?
Hey, I was trying to see my partner thing when it broken the team, and somehow the camera couldn't come on.
Okay.
I mean,
Let me
I try
try-
to show her my drawing.
Okay,
And I
let me
couldn't
try to
do
see
anything.
what I can do, if I can do anything. Give me 1 second.
You know what I would say about that? Even if you can't see the person's drawing, you would, if you were using Zoom, you'd be recording it anyway. And so you would hear how they explained what their drawing was. And then at the end of the interview, you could say, hey, would you mind taking a picture of your drawing and then emailing it to me? or texting it to me. So at that point, you'll get the drawing and you can compare it with whatever their explanation was.
That's a really good point. Thank you. You got it going, Louis? Cool.
Yeah, now I can show y'all.
So I wonder if we only have a few minutes left, and I wondered if there was a willing pair that would like to talk about what they did in the workshop. Okay, you're on. The man with the striped shirt.
My name is Louis Harrington.
Hello, Louis. Nice to meet you.
Well,
All right, so you're gonna you tell us what you drew, I guess, and then your partner will talk about what he or she
okay.
drew.
Y'all probably can't see it. It's just a little funny drawing, but oh well, fine. Y'all probably can't see it. Okay. The line across the ear. Probably not. The line across the ear. Can y'all see that?
Yes.
I'm actually deaf, and basically both deaf in both ears. The way I communicate is with my hearing aid, which I will show you now. These right here. And
Yes.
I've been born since when I was born deaf, so basically it's hard for me to understand people sometimes, hear them. My mama said hear them and understand them sometimes. So that's why and now Julia will explain. Julia? I don't know what
I'm
you.
sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. I don't do Zoom very often. I'm sorry. So I was interested because I'm interested more in linguistic anthropology, and I'm kind of interested in this activity that we're doing, in the sense where I like to think about how people who don't have who don't speak the same language, how they're able to communicate with one another and get together. So this is my beautiful drawing about person A who speaks A language, and then person B who speaks B language, and then how they're able to get their thoughts to communicate with one another. I didn't get too far into it, but because this idea after hearing it from you was the perfect thing to kind of like answer this. And so I didn't get to draw too far into it, but yeah.
Okay, so explain to me then how your drawing connects with the world of work and getting prepared in school to go into some workplace, whatever it might be. Where were you going with that?
Whenever people get together to work and you may be put in circumstances where you don't understand some of the people that you have to work with, it becomes a challenge and it doesn't have to be a bad challenge. It could be a good challenge to get together and try to come up with a way to communicate with one another that you can both get your points across and complete the idea and the work that you're doing together.
Okay. Okay. So would that involve like drawing as well as writing words down?
Yes, because another thing that I really like to focus on is like cognates, and so being able to find words that they're able to just match together, and kind of like a word game in a sense, and it's just being able to find things that could make sense to one person, or even trying to find words that could complete an idea.
Okay.
If that.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I'm explaining everything that.
Well, it's, no, that sounds good. And Louis, I appreciate the fact what you were saying about being deaf. My mother was deaf, and I'm quite used to being around people that are either hard of hearing or deaf. But I wondered about your drawing. How does it relate to the world of work? What additional preparation would you want to have in your anthropology program that would prepare you for the workplace?
Okay. Good question, Dr. Briody. Elizabeth, I mean. Most people don't understand the hearing process of someone who's not hearing. And the way I want that to become to help people understand the deaf people with problem hard of hearing. Me, I've been having hard of hearing since I was 4, but they consider I was born deaf.
Okay.
When they found out I was born deaf at the age of 4. But I was considered not a I do want people to understand about what they can hear about, what they can work with, the people who have hearing problem or a hearing problem. And the speech that I know y'all probably don't understand me well, but I've been having a hard time to speak myself. I was a quiet child. Like
So you,
I couldn't.
so excuse me, but so your drawing is to let people know that you
That I'm
do
deaf.
have hearing loss.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right. Okay. So is there anything else related to preparation for the workplace that you would like your anthropology program to have as part of it?
Have like hearing technology, like the best way we can hear, the
Okay.
person can hear, like with a hearing loss. Because where they didn't teach me enough hearing. They taught me how to use the hearing aid, but they didn't tell me how to clean it with all the cleaning stuff. But to make sure that we get the proper caring for it, like the proper understanding why I have hearing aids, because I was born deaf.
Okay.
I don't know if that answer your question.
Okay. And is there anybody else that wants to share a drawing, or have we had enough for tonight? Probably getting close to your dinner time.
No one else wants to share?
Elizabeth?
Yes.
I could explain the why I have this picture up, and it's just by it's really serendipity that I had this up, and that I read Tausig's book all day long today.
Oh, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I swear I saw this. I read half the book already. But you know what? When I was talking with Tom, because he was my partner in the room,
okay,
I told him about this picture. And this is where I think drawing may be able to help medical anthropology, because I did this picture when I was diagnosed with scoliosis, and it helped me get in touch with my own curve. So I knew then what I was doing the exercises for. And I thought that I gave this to my physical therapist, who was an Israeli working at Columbia Presbyterian. And I said, I think that we should have a workshop for children who have to do physical therapy and exercises, and they should draw their x-rays so that they can then see and be able to internalize what they're working on when they do their exercises.
Wow.
So that was kind of where we only got she did make a presentation, and then she found out that I guess it's already been established in hospitals to do that.
Okay.
But I don't think they do it. That's the problem. They don't do it.
Wow, that's quite powerful.
Mm.
And what did Tom draw?
We just talked.
Oh, come on.
But he had a question for you about somebody who does, I don't know, paintings. He thought you might know the person that he knew.
Oh, who?
If you want to go to did you go to Northwestern?
Did I?
Yeah.
Only when my daughter was in the hospital there.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I thought you were at Northwestern, perhaps.
No, sorry.
I teach a forensic anthropology class where we do a lot with bones.
Okay.
And Dr. Kathy Reichs was in my class, and of course she was the model for Bones TV show. She produces and directs, and she's done 18 novels and so forth. So I was very interested in this image of bones because we do talk a lot about bones. But organized and chaired the Visual Research Conference for 35 years. And I
Mhm.
wanted to know, this is a very interesting topic. I've never heard of anybody doing what you're doing exactly.
Mhm.
Every so often, we do have someone that deals with drawing. And in fact, I was starting to look back through my Visual Research Conference programs because I thought you might be interested in just
I would.
broadening out. There is one person that's very interesting, but not doing what you're doing. She uses portrait painting as a research method. In
Huh.
fact, her name is Dr. Zoe Bray. And I have it two ways in my phone, B-R-A-E, but I think it's B-R-A-Y actually.
Okay.
And she, her husband and she are in Israel. She was at, when I first was working with her, she was at University of Nevada, actually. But she actually is a portrait painter, trained in Italy, as well as a PhD anthropologist.
Huh.
And she uses portrait painting as a way of interviewing people that are otherwise very difficult to interview.
So
Because
how would she use that technique? She shows them a portrait?
no, she paints their portrait over a period of many days.
Oh.
And so as your person is posing for the portrait, she actually did it on me at the meetings last time we were in Chicago. There's something called the ethnographic terminalia, and they do amazing things that are on the fringe of everything, which is what a
Okay.
lot of exciting stuff is. And so I posed for a couple of days, and we have the painting in the living room. And I want you to know that two ethnographers staring at each other, because she has to look at me very closely to paint the. And
Right.
I want to have the painting. Well, she wanted me, and I agreed to have the painting. You know, the eyes follow you around the room because I'm looking right at the painter.
Right.
And let me tell you, if you're looking at someone for 2 days, this is an unusual circumstance in any culture, I think. We were going to write an article about it from both perspectives, actually, from
How
the one
cool.
painted. But she has interviewed, for instance, a fellow, I'm trying to remember his name. She has some Basque heritage, but there's all kinds of Basque separatist movements. You know, it's very political there on both the French and the Spanish side.
Right.
And
Right.
there was a famous artist or two that she was able to interview that no one else could, because his life basically was in danger, and he wouldn't let his handlers wouldn't let anybody near him. But she was able to interview him and got absolutely amazing material because she was painting him the whole time.
So did she have a tape recorder on? Or did she just try to remember, take breaks? And
she and I talked about that when she was doing my portrait. We thought about that. And in fact, for part of it, somebody was doing a video recording with sound, actually. And we just never have minded. Of course, when you turn a video camera on or any recorder on, then you've got a problem of dealing with that much material.
oh yeah, I know that. Yeah.
What I'm trying to say we should talk, because I'm a great fan of I still, in my cultural anthropology course, either at the beginning, usually at the end, show Anthropologists at Work, Careers Making a Difference, which is a wonderful, wonderful applied anthropology introduction. It's just so great.
That was back in the Paleolithic.
And I want you to know that even now, people who give advice as to whether someone should go into anthropology or not, in universities, they have no clue what anthropologists can do. And I know people have done others, and my wife uses others also, but we love that. And everybody has to know that you worked at General Motors, and we always listen to you, and all about RoboCut and about blaming and upstream. Everybody that's listening, you must see Anthropologists at Work, Careers Making a Difference. I think it's available on YouTube. You should just go on YouTube and see it. Anthropologists.
It could be. I know that you can get it from the AAA, but for those of you who don't know, it's a relatively short video, like a little over half hour, that we did way back in 1993. And I was not supposed to be in it. We had finished the filming, and then about 1 million people at the same time, it seemed, pushed me to be in it. And I reluctantly agreed because I don't like to appear on video or film. I'm just not good at it. Anyway, I ended up being in it, and that is what Tom is talking about here.
Well, I mean, talk about working in corporate America as an anthropologist for General Motors. That was really amazing. Everybody, it really makes everybody think about what anthropology is and could do.
Right.
And you just happened to pick something called RoboCut, and also you discovered by doing observation and talking to people that people often stored parts in their lockers.
Oh, so yeah, absolutely. That's been written up.
Wouldn't be blamed for shutting down the line. It was just so much innovative work. I'm really glad you overcame your modesty. And
oh, well, thank you, Tom. That's very kind.
But I'm saying you and I should talk, because over the years, I have people that do present in the Visual Research Conference or do a poster or something that are interested in drawing as part of anthropology, not the innovative thing you're doing. Although Elizabeth Marshall Thomas, as you mentioned, children, she among the San Bushmen, those Nwasi in Southern Africa, she did give them drawing materials. The thing for me, we worked in the Congo, is that people didn't even have paper. I mean, they were not used to drawing. They're very good at wood sculpture, some people. And I was just going to say, you might broaden out. It's not only drawing. I mean, some people are wonderful expressing things in the plastic arts too, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, any kind of a design. And certainly we see that in prototypes and mock-ups that people put together to try to get an idea of a concept out there. And then
you were in RoboCut, you were doing prototypes for vehicles.
Yeah, they were right.
With the robotics, they were claiming to save 2 or 3 years in the design process.
Absolutely. Yep.
At General Motors.
Yep.
Yeah. You've had several incarnations since then, I guess, huh?
Indeed. Yeah, we all have, right? And now we're having one with COVID. So
well, in any case, we apologize.
We'll connect afterwards, Tom.
Thank you.
All right.
This was such an awesome experience. I think it's so great that we are able to now be aware of this this tool, you know, to be able to bring and what's wild is that people, they think of anthropology as like this abstract thing, you know, where we research and we we document like the abstract facets of the social sciences, you know, but this is a way to make it not abstract, you know, to make it easier for people to actually have that physical reality with, you know, the hows and whys, you know. And I think that's so fascinating, and I'm excited to have this this knowledge, and thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'm so glad to be here. And if any of you would like to reach out, please feel free to do so. My email is my name with a dot between my first name and my last name, and at Gmail. So happy to take any additional time then with you. But thank you so much for hosting this, Zozo. It was great.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. And everybody stay warm with all the winter madness going on right now. But like I said earlier, I will have this recording posted, and I'll send out an email to all the registrants whenever it's uploaded for everybody to access. So, but awesome. Thank you guys so much for attending and sticking through the workshop. It was definitely fun and an experience.
So great to do for Anthropology Day. Way to go.
Yeah, there you go.
This was awesome.
All right. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.